Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the federal government gets back to work. From national parks to Defense Department workers, life is getting back to normal after 16 days of furloughs and closures. Also tonight, an update on hundreds of deported immigrants who were evicted from a border canal 2 months ago. They found a new place to stay.
And the billion-dollar plan to fix San Diego's broken roads, sidewalks, and other infrastructure. How you can let the city council know what you want repaired. Plus, how San Diego fared in today's Great California Shakeout earthquake drill. Where the major faults are, and will early detection systems work? I'm Peggy Pico with those answers and more in just a few minutes.
You know that aggravated feeling you get when your cell phone dies? They call it battery anxiety. We'll tell you how cell phone makers are trying to beat it. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Open for business again after a late-night vote in Washington to fund the government and raise the debt ceiling. Thousands of federal workers went back on the job today. In San Diego, the Cabrillo National Monument is open to visitors. Federal parks and landmarks across the country are once again welcoming folks in after 16 days of turning them away. Employees say they're glad to be back to work. They will get back pay, but they won't get it till their next paycheck. For many, that's not until October 29th. President Obama says there were no winners in the shutdown. This morning, he said it inflicted unnecessary damage on the economy and the nation's global image.
We don't know yet the full scope of the damage, but every analyst out there believes it slowed our growth. We know that families have gone without paychecks or services they depend on. We know that potential home buyers have gotten fewer mortgages and small business loans have been put on hold. We know that consumers have cut back on spending, and that half of all CEOs say that the shutdown and the threat of shutdown set back their plans to hire over the next 6 months. We hear some members who pushed for the shutdown say they were doing it to save the American economy. But nothing has done more to undermine our economy these past 3 years than the kind of tactics that create these manufactured crises.
The president also laid out a post-shutdown agenda, passing a budget, overhauling immigration, and approving a farm bill. He says Congress and the White House have a tough job ahead in regaining the public's trust. Nearly all of San Diego's congressional delegates voted to end the shutdown. Duncan Hunter voted against the deal. He hasn't commented about his vote, but the others have. Scott Peters says there was never any reason to use a government shutdown or threat of default as leverage for policy. On Twitter, Susan Davis said she's pleased to see the bipartisan support in the House and Senate. And Juan Vargas echoed the importance of bipartisanship, saying yesterday was a testament to what can be accomplished when Congress works in a bipartisan manner. And Darrell Issa tweeted, "This will not be the end of talking about Obamacare or government spending." He says Congress must work hard to tackle the country's debt. A big endorsement today. In the San Diego mayor's race, the Police Officers Association is throwing its support behind Nathan Fletcher. KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks has the story.
In the primary for last year's mayoral election, then Republican Nathan Fletcher got the Police Officers Association nod easily. This year, the Police Officers Association took a little more time to sort out just whom they would endorse. Fletcher's party may have changed. He's now a Democrat, but in the end, the Police Officers Association endorsement didn't. Brian Marvel is the president of the organization that represents 98% of police in the city.
Our main focus is we want to focus on public safety. We feel that over the last 7-10 years, public safety hasn't been a priority for a variety of issues, but we feel that we're turning the page and Nathan can move us forward.
Marvel says he thinks Fletcher has the ability to solve the department's retention and recruitment problems, as well as address the looming fact that half of current officers will become eligible for retirement in the next 4 years. Sandhya Dirks, KPBS News.
A recent study ranks San Diego roadways as the 4th worst in the nation. Peggy Pico explains how City Council plans to repair the broken streets.
San Diego's damaged roads, sidewalks, deteriorating water mains, and other aging infrastructure were estimated to cost the city at least $900 million to repair. But an independent budget analysis says the repairs could actually cost as much as $2 billion. Here with more on the city's progress on a 5-year infrastructure fix-it plan is San Diego City Councilman Mark Kersey. Welcome.
Thank you, Peggy. Thanks for having me.
Now, Mark, how did the city let itself get into this infrastructure problem? How has it progressed and become so bad?
Well, it really comes down to years of neglect is the real answer. I mean, we went a lot of years during the fiscal crisis where we just didn't invest in things like maintenance. And when you don't maintain your roads, it's similar to your car. If you don't change your oil, you're not going to have a well-performing engine. And at some point, you're going to have to just replace it and you can't catch up. And that's where we are right now. We didn't invest in maintenance for a long period of time. And the roads, when you don't maintain them, they just fall apart. And then you can't maintain them anymore. You just have to rebuild new roads.
And it's pretty significant. An independent budget analysis found San Diego's estimated cost of nearly $900 million to repair these backlog, as you say, of issues was likely to cost perhaps double that amount, closer to like $2 billion. Why the huge discrepancy on the $1 million to $2 million? That's a pretty big jump.
That's right. I mean, the first numbers that came out were estimates based on 3 primary asset categories, and that was $898 million. And we knew that that was good data, but it was incomplete data. And so what we know going forward is we need to do condition assessments on, for example, sidewalks. The city has never done a citywide comprehensive sidewalk condition and needs assessment, ever. And so we got money put in the budget this year, about $1 million, to actually do that first one. And we don't know what the price tag is going to be. It's going to be a big number, but we don't know what that number is. And so that's why there's that variation between $1 billion and $2 billion. And you start to add in things like the Point Loma wastewater treatment plant, it could be even higher.
All right. Now, you're the chair of the City Council's first infrastructure committee. How do you plan to tackle this problem?
Well, the committee was created back in December, and our interim mayor now, who is also our council president, Todd, Gloria, had the vision to create the committee because previously we had never had anybody with the direct oversight responsibility for infrastructure projects. And so he named me the chairman of the committee, and we've had a busy 10 months. We came out with the city's first infrastructure work plan back in January. We got the money for this first sidewalk condition assessment, as I mentioned. We got the first neighborhood input policy passed. So we're going around and talking to people throughout the city, which is going to help us figure out how do we prioritize these projects. And what this is all going to culminate in is the city's first 5-year infrastructure plan, which sounds basic enough because most large government agencies have one. Port has one, the counties have one. The city of San Diego not only doesn't have one, we can't find evidence we've ever had one.
Well, $1 to $2 billion, if I had said million before, I meant $1 to $2 billion
Right.
we expect on this. How is the city going to get that money? Taxes, bonds? What's the situation?
Well, I think there's going to have to be a pretty serious civic discussion about that next year. My focus right now is on the 5-year infrastructure plan because we don't even know what the price tag is right now. So it'd be very difficult for us to go to the voters asking for anything when we don't even know how much we need. So we're going to concentrate on the condition assessments, the neighborhood input, and the 5-year infrastructure plan. Once we get all those done, then we can see what the cost is and then have that conversation.
What about the deferred capital bond? You wouldn't need a vote for that. Is that something that you're going to discuss that next week?
That's right. So that's going to come to my committee. This is a 5-year program. The third issuance of that is coming to my committee next week. It's going to be at least $100 million, and this is for deferred capital projects. It'll be everything from streets and roads, fire stations, libraries, and it's not enough money, but it's a good chunk, a good down payment to get us where we need to be.
To get started. If we get loaded up on sort of these bond loans to pay for this, how would that impact the general fund?
Well, there is debt service that we have to pay. And right now, interest rates are still low and construction costs are still low. We know in the future, both of those are going to rise. And so right now, bonding is appropriate. We may get to a point in the future where bonding no longer makes sense. And ultimately, we need to be investing more money out of the city's general fund directly towards infrastructure projects. And any surpluses that are coming in, I want to see at least half of those surpluses dedicated to infrastructure.
Now, you passed a policy to formalize getting neighborhoods and residents input about the projects they want fixed, priorities in their community. Tell us how they can participate.
Well, we've got a series of community meetings that are starting next week. We actually did the first one in my district as a pilot a couple of months ago. And we're going to do one in Balboa Park next week with Todd, Gloria for District 3. And then we're going to do another one with Scott Sherman 2 days later. And then we're going to have one each week until we round out each council district. And the idea is we know that our project need greatly outstrips the resources. We need to prioritize these projects. We don't want to dictate that from City Hall, so let's have the communities help us understand how to prioritize these projects.
Great opportunity for people to get involved
Absolutely.
in something that would really matter. All right, San Diego City Council member Mark Kersey, thank you very much. And I just want to remind people that the next neighborhood input meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 22nd at 6 p.m. in Balboa Park with interim Mayor Todd, Gloria, and Council member Mark Kersey. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
A new problem tonight for the state's online health insurance exchange. Covered California had to remove its online directory of medical providers because of mistakes, like obstetricians being listed as ophthalmologists. The site's search function is also down for fixes. Covered California hopes to have it back up next week. The state's lieutenant governor wants California to get serious about legalizing marijuana, and he says he'll put his political reputation on the line to get it done. Gavin Newsom says he'll lead a blue ribbon panel to study how California can tax and regulate legal marijuana sales. The group will look at what's happened in Colorado and Washington, where marijuana was legalized last year. Newsom says the goal is to have a ballot initiative ready for November 2016. When Tijuana police cleared out a canal bordering the U.S. and Mexico in August, they evicted hundreds of deported migrants camping there. Many took up residence in a nearby plaza. Now, 2 months later, Fronteras reporter Jill Replogle says the squatters' camp has become a virtual village.
More than 600 people are now living here, just a few blocks from Tijuana's central tourist district. It's part protest camp, part homeless shelter. A group of migrants deported from the U.S. and living in Mexicali purchased the tents and helped set up the camp. Javier Reyes is with the group, called Ángeles Sin Fronteras, or Angels Without Borders. This morning, he's manning the intake table. Reyes tells a young man from Guatemala to come back in the evening to claim a spot in a tent. Between 14 and 16 deported migrants show up every day, Reyes says. Camp leaders organize cleaning crews and security details, but they don't plan on staying here indefinitely. They have a bigger goal. A hotel, Reyes says, a shelter for a lot of migrants, not just 20 or 30, like most of the other shelters in town. The deportee squatters don't expect they'll be allowed to stay in the plaza much longer. Plus, the rainy season is coming, and they'll need sturdier lodging soon. Jill Replogle, KPBS News.
An American nun who spent 30 years ministering to prison inmates in Tijuana has died. Sister Antoniabrenner went from Beverly Hills, where she was born, to one of Mexico's most violent prisons. She lived there for more than 30 years, not only providing spiritual guidance, but basic material needs like blankets and medicine. She called the inmates her sons and daughters and became known as La Mama. Her story was told in a documentary last year on KPBS.
Her incredible ministry behind bars is documented in the new film La Mama, an American nun's life in a Mexican prison. Joining me is the film's producer and writer, Jody Hammond.
A very, very primitive place, and if you didn't have money, you might not even have a cell or a place to sleep, and it was dangerous.
Sister Antonia left the prison because of poor health. She died this morning at a convent in Tijuana. She was 86.
Yeah, this is an emergency in San Francisco. What happened? There's a hell of an earthquake, and we've got windows and everything that have fallen out. We've got a hell of a dust cloud.
How is it all emergency?
Cypress section of the West Grand Freeway has come down.
The Cypress structure has collapsed.
Known as the Loma Prieta earthquake 24 years ago today, that 6.9 earthquake rocked the San Francisco Bay Area, destroying freeways, bridges, and buildings, and killing 63 people. Today, more than 800,000 people in at least quite a few people in San Diego County joined in a statewide earthquake drill. Peggy Pico has an update on where the county stands on early warning systems.
At 10:17 this morning, local businesses, schools, and offices took part in the Great California Shakeout earthquake drill. Here with details on what an earthquake scenario might be like in San Diego and where we stand on preparedness is Pat Abbott, Professor Emeritus of Geology at San Diego State University. And good to see you again, Pat.
Good to be here.
Now, earlier this week, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake in the Philippines killed more than 100 people. What is the potential of an earthquake that size like here in San Diego?
Oh, very real. It could happen any given day. And in fact, the Easter earthquake of 3 years ago was a 7.2 magnitude, so that could happen to us.
In Baja.
In Baja, California, near just west of Mexicali. And the difference is, though, the Philippine buildings are built differently than ours. Ours are constructed to codes where they can withstand earthquakes, and people need to stay in them, where in the Philippines we saw them running out for safety. Wrong thing to do here.
All right. The Rose Canyon fault, is that still considered an active fault?
Oh, it is known to be an active fault, not just considered. The northern segment of that moved to the 1933 Long Beach earthquake, a magnitude 6.4 earthquake. The same thing will happen here in San Diego on some given day in an unknown year. But yes, that's a very real threat.
We're looking at a map of several fault lines in the area. Tell us about the most active here in Southern California that's up there, the San Jacinto.
The San Jacinto is the most active in terms of putting out the most earthquakes. The ones we're most concerned with, the one to the east there, the famous San Andreas fault. That segment of the San Andreas has not moved since around the year 1690. The central section moved in 1857. The northern is the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. Our segment is lagging behind. And probabilistically, that's where we expect the next big earthquake in California, magnitude 7.6, 7.8, something very large.
For those who didn't participate in today's statewide earthquake drill, highlight a scenario, let's say, of a 7.0 earthquake here in San Diego. Who would be the most vulnerable? What areas would be the most vulnerable? Down near the beach, downtown? Point it out to us.
There's no one area. Every area have dangers of their own. Even a simple thing like which way your couch is oriented in your house may do it. So what we try to do now, the whole point of this great shakeout is to not stop and think about things, but to instantly dive for cover. That the biggest problem is not the earthquake, it's our own buildings coming down on top of us. So we like to make like a turtle. Give yourself a shell. Get under that heavy dining room table, get under a desk, get under something so when things are falling, you're not hit.
Well, you mentioned that in the Philippines it was appropriate to run outside because their buildings aren't made for earthquakes of this size. But here, particularly, we're pretty prepared as far as buildings. Our buildings will withstand this?
Yes, well, California has done very, very well with earthquake and building codes. After every major earthquake, 1933 and 71, 94 and so forth, wherever the biggest problems occur, in the year following, they enact new laws, they make the changes in the building codes to help us better adapt. I could very dramatically illustrate this by the one from 24 years ago, the Loma Prieta earthquake up in the Bay Area there, killed 63 people, which is not acceptable, but that was almost an exact clone of the earthquake that hit Haiti in 2010 that killed 250,000 people. The difference between 63 and 250,000 dead, how buildings are built.
Okay. Now, Governor Brown has signed a bill to get an early warning detection system in place by 2016. How much do you think a warning system or detection system, how much do you think that would help as far as would it provide minutes, seconds, every little bit counts, or not so much?
It's not a prediction. This is sending a message out after the earthquake occurs. So if you're at the epicenter, zero benefit from it. The farther away you are, the more notice you get. What it boils down to is this: the fastest seismic waves are these ones like slinky toys. They're not really damaging. The ones that follow, like we experienced 3 years ago, the big rolling waves, those are the damaging waves. So the farther away you are, the more notice you get. But we're talking about seconds, or at most a few tens of seconds. It's not a night and day difference, but it does give people and businesses and such some significant time to act if you're already mentally prepared for an action.
As in climbing over and taking cover.
Exactly.
Okay. How effective do you think earthquake drills like today's Shakeout is in preparing people for the real thing?
I'm a huge fan of this because I'm thinking with these school children now, this is the 6th year in a row and it will continue. And I figure if they do that once a year through all their school years, they're going to then be mentally programmed that when they feel earthquake shaking, it won't be just this discombobulation like, oh, what do I do now? And running around, you know, like a chicken with your head cut off kind of a thing. You don't have time to think once an earthquake starts. So you want to be programmed to, my safety lies in, and bam, dive underneath that dining room table.
All right, Geology Professor Pat Abbott, thank you so much. A whole lot more information on our website, kpbs.org. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, analysis of the budget brinkmanship on Capitol Hill. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
Some San Diego high school students got a pep talk about attending college. The chancellor of UC San Diego visited Claremont and Mission Bay high schools today, along with some admissions officers. It's part of a University of California initiative to encourage low-income students with good grades to seek financial aid and scholarships. UC San Diego's chancellor says it's an important message for students and the country.
The day our kids in this country, the day when they will be going to school only because they can afford it because of their family income, is the day when we start losing our edge in this country.
Students also got sessions on college life, how to apply to schools, and writing application essays. The UC system reaches about 10,000 students through events like that one. A new report says more teenagers are drinking soda, but the sugary drinks are less popular among younger children. Researchers at UCLA say it's because of soda bans at schools. They've been off limits in high school since 2009, but the bans have been around much longer for elementary and middle schools. How many times have you left the house only to realize your cell phone is about to die? That's called battery anxiety, and cell phone companies are trying to alleviate it through wireless charging technology. KPBS technology reporter David Wagner sets out to learn what it will take for wireless charging to truly catch on.
When Martin Cooper made the first public cell phone call 40 years ago, it took 16 hours to fully charge his brick of a phone.
We didn't have the technology to charge them quickly. If you charge them too fast, they'd explode.
Even then, Cooper only got 20 minutes of talk time. The wireless communication pioneer lives in Del Mar now, and he's seen cell phones come a long way. But Cooper admits charging is still a total pain. To prove his point, he shows me his impressive collection of obsolete chargers. Oh, I used to have one like this. I forget what kind of phone it was for.
Yeah, well, that's a Samsung. Did you have a Samsung phone?
Yeah, I think so. What if we could permanently get rid of all these chargers? What if our nightstands, desks, cars, and favorite cafes all had wireless charging surfaces embedded right inside them? What if we could, as Jay-Z put it in a recent Duracell commercial,
never be powerless?
Well, we can. In theory, anyway. For that to happen, wireless charging technology would have to be ubiquitous and standardized. The industry hasn't figured out how to do that yet.
Look at a Star Trek episode. You never see anybody turn around looking for an outlet, right? You know, you got the tricorder, you got the communicators, and they just work, right? And that's really the type of experience that we want to show to the world.
Problem is, there's more than one way to do wireless charging. And in the last few years, a bunch of industry groups have formed to promote their own pet standards. They each know it would be best for consumers if one universal standard worked for every phone. The challenge lies in getting everyone on board with a single standard when everyone's partial to their own. In one camp, you've got a bunch of automakers wanting a certain standard inside their cars. In another camp, you've got Starbucks planning to put a different standard in their cafes. And in yet a third camp, you've got industry heavyweights like Qualcomm still working to improve their own technology before going to market. Caught in the middle of all this is Soren Nielsen, the CEO and founder of a small San Diego startup called Devant Technologies. He's trying to get wireless charging pads installed in businesses like restaurants, cafes, hotels.
Nightclubs is a good place where we're going to start our business as well. End of the day, you really want to stay in touch with your friends.
But small startups need support, so Nielsen joined forces with an industry group that backs a specific kind of wireless charging technology called Qi.
It's spelled QI, so pronunciation doesn't come natural, I think, a lot of times in the beginning.
But other industry groups want their standards to win out. Qualcomm has actually joined all three major industry groups in the past few weeks, aiming to be a grand unifier of sorts. They think the wireless charging pads currently on the market aren't quite ready for prime time. But the Qi pad Nielsen showed me worked well enough.
Could I try my phone?
Sure.
I had to slip my iPhone into a special case, but other than that, the Qi standard worked pretty well. And it's already on the market, an obvious plus. But Qualcomm's prototype did work a little better. It could charge multiple devices at the same time, and my phone didn't need to be directly on top of the surface to charge. Minor differences aside, Martin Cooper hopes to see the industry settle on a single standard and not some confusing hybrid approach.
But the more you have to think about it, the worse technology it is. So if you have two standards and you have to remember to switch between one or the other, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Cooper tried out wireless charging for himself not too long ago, with little success. It turns out he wasn't placing the pad he bought right side up. Looking at it, I could understand his confusion. He knows wireless charging is the future, but for now, he's back to plugging his phone in each night. David Wagner, KPBS News.
And we're back to comfortable sleeping weather at night and plenty of sunshine during the daytime. In fact, that's the forecast through the weekend. High pressure pushing temperatures into the 70s. At the coast, you'll see a mix of sun and clouds there. Mostly in the 80s through Saturday for the inland valleys. The mountain areas, plenty of sunshine with temperatures in the low 70s. And as for the desert, we'll see temperatures there pretty normal for this time of year in the 80s with plenty of sunshine. You can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Good night.